I'll be watching.
I think that was the first one, like the last 3 weeks. The class.
Oh, yeah.
Kurt said him and Hondo started up anytime.
They're- The only reason why they did clap in between the songs is because I said, you can clap.
Something was the other day, and he's the one that started clapping, because Linda turned around and said they all listening to the kid today, ain't they? I said, yeah, because he started.
Yeah, I was a little late on that one, and then you said something.
Yeah.
All right, been a couple of weeks since we had like a normal routine, so I hope those of you who are here are settling into school. Everybody started by now, right? Everybody that goes to high school has started by now, right? We started and had like 2 days with no internet, so that was fun. It's been trying to learn a whole new curriculum, a whole new class, and do something I've never done before, and don't have like backup materials, so everything was online through my Google Drive, and I couldn't share it and couldn't use it. So today I took my own computer and used my phone hotspot for 2 periods, and then we got internet back.
You used the wrong year. So that's
Yeah, I was
Should
about to
be
say
you
that.
are. Like, should be like apostrophe RE. I'm pretty well known for messing up things grammatically, why I will never teach English. But thank you for pointing it out, because Emily would be grateful that you did that, since she wasn't here to do that.
Oh, I was gonna do it for her.
Is that when your hand went up like that? Thanks.
You're
I'm
welcome.
gonna start sending it to y'all to spell check it before we use it. But anyway, been a while since we've done it this way, because we had those 2 nights of some goofiness and threw some color at each other, and then
Which is still in my hair.
we got together so that we could break James's pinky and do some kickball. And now we're back to a normal routine, and I want to talk to you. We're almost to the end of James. We've got we're in chapter 5, which is the last chapter, and there's 2 more topic areas or subject areas to get to, but this one is about waiting for the Lord. You know, most of y'all probably placed an order on Amazon, and I think we're all kind of the same. We decide we want something, we order it online, and we order, and then we're constantly picking up our phone and checking the tracking. Like somehow, if I track it more often, it's gonna speed up the package. Like the delivery truck's gonna get quicker. Or things happen like I ordered, we've got a set of recliners that like 3 different times, the little clip that you pull to like make the legs pop out has broken like 3 different times, and you can just order like this universal part to replace it. And I've done that, done that, done that. The last one I ordered when it broke, I was watching the tracking, and it came from wherever the original place was, made it to Nashville, made it to Huntsville, and I thought, all right, cool, I might get it like this evening or in the morning. Well, it didn't show up, and I thought, well, that's weird. I pulled the tracking up to see if it at least made it to Muscle Shoals, and it was in like Kentucky. And then I was like, okay, something ain't right. The next day I check it, and it was in like California. So who knows what they were doing. But the point being, is sometimes that's kind of what it feels like when we're waiting on God to do something. We get in a hurry and we want it right now, and there's a process that has to take place, and we have to trust that when we order something from Amazon, that it's going to get to us. When we order something from some other online place, it's going to get to us. Now, here's the deal. Amazon will fail you, because I ended up having to reorder that piece that ended up on the other side of the country. And what's crazy is I reordered it, that piece showed up 2 days later, and the original piece that I ordered showed up 2 days later. So that technically they didn't fail me, they got it to me, but it just took a detour, it took a little longer. And sometimes that's the way God works. And like y'all are familiar with this story, but it's just a part of our ongoing walk with Jesus, right? To wait, and we're not comfortable waiting because we think the waiting is pointless. We get this idea in our mind, like this is what needs to happen, this is what needs to come next. But God obviously already knows the plan, and so we miss out on key opportunities while we're waiting, right? The wait is when God's really kind of working us into the people that He's fashioned us to be, or maybe God is just realizing like we're struggling a little bit on trusting Him, so He brings this season to help us to learn to trust Him again. He could be using that time to do that, but everybody's heard of this story, Bethany Hamilton. There's a movie about her. When she was 13, she was surfing off of an island in Hawaii and was attacked by a tiger shark that left her without her left arm. This tragedy, Bethany started to question after this tragedy whether to continue to surf or not, but she pressed on and figured out how to move forward. While she was waiting on God, about a year after her accident, she signed up with the World Vision and boarded a plane en route to a tsunami-stricken Thailand. She spent the week there serving the people of Thailand in a lot of different ways, but the most memorable way involved helping more than 50 children from a little village that she was serving in overcome their fear of the ocean by taking them out and surfing. So she lost her arm, and she's wondering, like, what is in this? Like, what's happening? God revealed to me the plan, right? And I don't know all the details, but if she hadn't lost her arm, she may be doing something different. She may be surfing in some competitions or whatnot, but she lost her arm, and she's led to this mission trip where she's able to go out and not just share the love of Jesus, not just care for people and minister to people, but actually take a gift and a talent that she has and use it to help over 50 kids overcome their fear of surfing. And so God has a purpose through all the things we go through. When I read the scripture here in chapter 5, verses 7 through 12, and then we dive into it real quick and just talk about it, know that James is writing to people who are in the same boat as what I'm talking about. They're frustrated, hurting, wondering why God's not moving, why things haven't been figured out. And everything I'm fixing to read in 5 verses can be summed up like this. James basically looks at us and just simply says, be patient. We can take all 5 verses that I'm going to read, a lot of words, and sum it up by saying that James just says, be patient. It says, therefore, brothers and sisters, be patient until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the precious fruit of the earth and is patient with it until it receives the early and late rains. You also must be patient. Strengthen your hearts because the Lord is coming. The Lord's coming is near. Brothers and sisters, do not complain about one another so that you will not be judged. Look, the judge stands at the door. Brothers and sisters, take the prophets who spoke in the Lord's name as an example of suffering and patience. See, we count as blessing those who have endured, who have heard of Job's endurance and have seen the outcome that the Lord brought about. The Lord is compassionate and merciful. So let's just jump right in there real quick. Starting at the beginning, James lets us know that patience is not passive, right? We don't just go, okay, God's going to do something in my life. Let me just hang out in my recliner and scroll through TikTok till something happens. Right? We keep moving. We keep working. Verse 7 says, see how the farmer waits for his precious fruit of the earth and is patient until he receives the rain. James is using the farmer as the example here, but he's waiting for his crops. When a farmer's waiting on crops to come in, they don't just sit and chill in a lawn chair on the front porch and drink cold lemonade or sweet tea. They go out and they work. They plant. They protect the fields. They do what they need to do to prepare, and then they trust that God's going to bring the rain. Patience in God's timing does not mean that we just sit around and wait. It means that we work faithfully, get this part, with what we can do, and we trust God with what we can't. Think about it like this. People in this room have played sports, have been a part of an athletic team or whatnot. There's a season for what you do. football season is right now, right? I don't know if we got anybody that plays football right now, but football season's fixing to start. There'll be games this weekend. And those guys, their season ended at the end of October, early November of last year. They didn't just come into the field house after the last game, pull their shoulder pads and their helmet and all that off and set it down, and then tell everybody bye, walk out of the room, and then this week when school started, come walking back in and start again. When that season ended, they probably had about a week off, and then they went straight back to the weight room. They started working out. As soon as school ended, they started having an off-season weight program. They were working out, they were running, they were doing things to get in shape. If they're really smart and they're dedicated and they actually want to be a good football player and do well, they're probably watching their diet and doing that on their own. They're eating what they need to eat. They're taking in enough calories. They're taking care of their bodies. And so they did that all summer, and then in July, in late summer, they get there and they work out, and then they go play 7-on-7, and they go outside and practice, and they run through drills. And it's been an ongoing process for months to get back to this point, which is that first game of the season. I know we got people in here that play baseball or play basketball or are part of it, another type of program of some kind, and there's a season for what you do, and then there's an off season. And during that off season, whenever games aren't happening, people aren't coming to watch you, they're not cheering for you and clapping for you, when nobody's looking, there are things that you have to do to prepare and be good and be ready. And that's what James is telling us with what God wants to do for us, and what God is doing for us in our life is not to be sitting down just waiting for something to happen. We need to be active. We need to be moving. We need to be working. Again, going back to what I said, make sure you catch that part. Doing what we can with what we can, and trusting God to do what He's going to do with what we can't. While you're waiting on God to answer, we need to keep praying, serving, worshiping, studying. Our waiting is not wasted if we work while we wait. Our waiting is wasted, and I honestly believe in my own experiences, if I just decide God's going to do something, God's working it out, and I don't have to do anything, and I go hang out in my recliner to just wait and see what happens, it's either not going to happen or it's going to take an extremely long time to happen. God's asking me to be a good steward with what I can do and what I've got in the meantime as He works to fulfill the things that are coming my way. The second thing James points us to in verse 9, he says, brothers and sisters, do not complain about one another so that you will not be judged. Look, the judge stands at the door. When you're waiting, you need to know that waiting will test your heart. It's going to find out who you really are when you're in these seasons of waiting. Going back to the football analogy real quick, or illustration, as a coach, I saw guys who would make it through a season, and then when it was over, they could not make it through the summer workouts. They couldn't be there on time. They couldn't get there when they were supposed to. They would just miss. We actually had a guy, I don't even know all these kids yet, because I've been at Lauderdale County for all of about 5 days. So I don't even know the kids' names in my classrooms except for a few. I'm still trying to learn them in my class. But I was sitting in the lunchroom, and there was a young man who come up and had went to ask if he could play football. He hadn't been to one summer workout. He hadn't participated in any event, 7-on-7, or anything they did the entire summer. He went to ask on Monday, and they played their first game on Friday. He bypassed all the work that everybody else done and was going to ask if he could play football. I think the answer was no. I don't know the whole story. Like I said, I don't know him. But that's what we try to do sometimes. God's got something that's coming our way. He's got something He's going to do for us. But we want to skip all the effort, all the work, all the things, right? And it's going to test our heart because it's hard. He says, don't grumble with each other and don't complain so that we won't be judged. Waiting can make you grumpy. Anybody get a little grumpy when you're hungry and you got to wait a little bit to get some food? Snickers used to make the commercial about not being hungry but being hangry, right? We complain about people. when we have to wait? When we're waiting and we think that God's like holding us out there and just not gonna come through for us, we start complaining about people. People bother us. We start complaining about our situation. We start complaining about everything. We even complain about God when we're waiting. If you've ever been on a really long road trip, hopefully this is not you, but if you've been on a really long road trip and there's been a kid in the car, what happens when you're on a long road trip? You're going for about an hour and all of a sudden that little kid starts going, hey, are we there yet? Are we there yet? About 15, 20 minutes later, how about now? How about now? I imagine that as we're impatiently waiting for God to do things for us, we probably sound like that annoying kid to God. There's an expectation that it's going to take a little while, and we should know it's going to take a little while, but here we are in His ear. God, are we there yet? God, have I got it yet? God, did you do it yet? But we're skipping the first step. We're being passive. We're not doing anything. We're just expecting God to handle it. And now we're getting frustrated, and we're getting upset, and we're complaining. And now we're ruining our witnesses, testing our heart. Who are we really? All the complaining on that trip makes the trip miserable for you and everybody around you. When we complain, when we start complaining about people and circumstances and even God, we're bringing down everybody around us. We're hurting our own witness. We're not setting the example that He's asked us to set. So instead of complaining about what God has not done, maybe the things that we should do would be to ask ourselves, what are you trying to teach me right now? Are you trying to help me to trust you more? Are you trying to show me something? God, reveal to me what I need to learn. What are you trying to show me right now? And then your words and your actions, once you make that prayer and you say those things, will reveal one of two things. Either you're truly trusting Him, or you're just saying it because it sounds good and you have doubt in your heart. Look, it's not easy. I don't pretend to stand here and tell you like we're supposed to pray these prayers and go, God, what are you showing me? And what do you need me to learn? And it's supposed to be super easy. Don't misunderstand that. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's what James is telling us that we're supposed to do. Y'all have heard, most of you have heard the story, but Amy and I started pursuing the route for adoption, and it took 13 years. 13 years for it to actually finalize. And during that time, there was dead end after dead end. There would be times that literally the door was open halfway and then boom, would slam right back in our face. And there were times where I messed it up because I did this. I started complaining. I questioned God about what was going on. Now that I can look back on it, she's 5 years old. She's been in our house 5 years. Everything worked like it was supposed to. I can look back and give you the whole story. And even if you don't believe in God, your response would be, God knew what was going to happen the whole time, and He planned it out, and He took care of that. But there was times when I doubted it. I looked at Him thinking like, God, what did I do? Why am I not good enough? Why can you not help us with this? But God knew before we ever started praying for adoption, before we ever got married, He knew that Lily would be born on February the 16th, 2020, and He knew that she was coming to our house on the 19th and that she would live with us and be with us and we would be her parents. Before I ever met Amy, God knew it. He worked it out. The next thing that James points us to, he says, brothers and sisters, take the prophets who spoke in the Lord's name as an example of suffering and patience. See, we count as blessed those who have endured. You have heard of Job's endurance, and you have seen the outcome that the Lord brought you. The Lord is compassionate and merciful. James is telling us to look at those who have waited well. There's plenty of examples in the scripture about people who waited well, but there's people around you. There are mentors and folks that you're around every single day, family, church members, who have waited well and know how to wait well. He points to Job and the prophets and how they've endured these long seasons, but ultimately when it was over, they saw God's purpose at the end. There was a TV show years ago. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of it or not. Kinda embarrassed to even say I watched it, but it was like a whole family thing. Apparently, like we had friends that would come over and we'd eat food. It was called Pretty Little Liars. And the purpose of the show, or the whole plot of the show was like the very first episode or second episode, very, very early, there was like a friend group of, I think it was 5 of them. One girl came up missing. For 7 seasons and 160 plus episodes, the entire show was about figuring out what happened to this girl named Allison. During that show, what happened is people either turned the show on, they watched for so long, and then they gave up and just thought, well, it's never gonna happen, we're never gonna find out what's going on, and they quit watching. And then there was people like us who watched all 160 plus episodes to figure out what was at the end. That's kind of like what it looks like, because along the way, things happen, and if you're watching the show, you're trying to piece it together. You're like, oh, he did this, and she did that, and this person's here, and that person, and you're playing it in your mind, and you're trying to solve the puzzle, and that's what we do to God. One little thing happens, we're like, oh, here it is. He's gonna do this, he's gonna do that, and we start to try to figure it out, or we quit. We give up and think God's not gonna take care of it, and we quit. Don't give up in the middle just because you can't see the end of it. I'm not extremely old, but I'm not young either, and I can tell you this, God's endings are always worth waiting for. Every time that I've ever had to wait, and God's revealed to me why I waited, it's always better than what I could have imagined. So his endings are worth waiting for. Lastly, I didn't read this part yet, but picking up on verse 12, which was the final verse, it says, above all, brothers and sisters, do not swear either by heaven or by earth or with any other oath, but let your yes mean yes and your no mean no, so that you do not fall under judgment. James is telling us that we need to have integrity while we wait. That kind of goes back to how it tests our heart. There's a certain expectation of like who and what and how we should be, but we need to have integrity while we wait. When we wait, like we talked about earlier, we can get upset, frustrated, mad, complain. But another thing when we wait, we can be tempted to cut corners, take shortcuts to just make it happen. Do it ourselves. God's not doing it, I'll go do it. James is telling us here, don't compromise your character. Don't try to speed things up. Don't try to do it your own. Think about it like this. Hopefully you've never done it, but you could cheat on a test to make a better grade faster. We all know we can do that. But it's going to ruin the trust that people have in you. You're also not going to acquire any real knowledge because you didn't study, you didn't put that in your mind, you looked at a piece of paper or whatever method you used to cheat, you got the answers, you walked away, and you might have an A, but you really don't have a clue. You don't gain any real knowledge, and you didn't maintain the character, and people start to question you, and they have a hard time trusting you. That's what it looks like when we start to take shortcuts and we try to make it happen on our own versus letting God be in control. So it's the same thing spiritually. Shortcuts may get us where we want to be or get us something faster, but it's going to rob you of what God wants to do for you and in you. Your character will always be more valuable than any fast-track opportunity. Protect it while you wait for God. Again, his endings are always worth waiting for. Better than we can imagine, bigger and better than anything that you can think of. And I can think of some really cool stuff, but I promise you, anything I can think of, God's plan for me is way bigger. It's way better. And he's got to work it out. Everything that I've talked to you about to this point, I've either struggled with or struggle with now. I don't claim perfection, and I'm not saying that it's easy, but this is how James says we should do it. So the truth is, God's not late, we're just early. And when it feels like God's taking forever, there's 3 things that we need to remember. God's timing is always perfect.